The story begins with a fisherman heading out to sea, but over the next 2 days, he will face the worst experience of his life. At first, things were fine. The weather was calm. He took his small boat and set off. But after a short time, he found himself in a thick fog. He couldn't see anything and didn't know where he was going. Suddenly, he collided with something and stopped, trying to focus. He saw a large ship standing in the middle of the sea, and it was what he had collided with. He started calling out, "Is anyone here?" But there was no answer. Feeling curious, he tied his boat to the ship and climbed up to see what was happening. When he reached the deck, he found no one. He went downstairs, searching for any person or even an animal, but there was no trace of anyone. The ship was very luxurious, everything seemed new, and food was ready on the table. It seemed as if something unusual had happened to the owner of this ship. He grabbed the radio, trying to send a distress signal, but he received no response. He went back up to the deck to discover that his boat had disappeared, even though he had tied it himself. It was clear that someone had untied it. He quickly went down to look for binoculars and tried to look around, but the fog was so thick that he couldn't see anything. He had to wait for the fog to clear to decide what to do. After the fog cleared, he went to the helm to move the ship, but it wouldn't work. After a short time, he heard a sound from below, so he went down slowly to see what was happening. He found a door opening and closing on its own. He thought it was just the wind, so he ignored it and went up to the deck to adjust the sail and let the wind guide the ship. He sat thinking about what he should do, but he couldn't come up with anything useful. Later, he felt the need to urinate, so he went towards the side of the ship to do so, but he almost fell into the sea when the wind suddenly pushed the sail. Luckily, he managed to hold onto the ship and return to the deck. He decided to do what he had to do like a civilized person, so he went into the bathroom to relieve himself. But the door suddenly closed behind him from the outside, and he found himself trapped. He kept trying to open the door, and when he opened the bathroom window, he found traces of blood. He took scissors to try to open the door, but to no avail. He heard the radio finally working, and it was warning of the approach of another ship. He realized that he had to move quickly, so he took off his clothes and started waving from the window to the oncoming ship, but no one saw him. He tried his best to stop the ship, but when he threw the rope to the propeller, he was almost seriously injured. He miraculously managed to free himself. He noticed that the rope had broken, and the ship began to move away from the other vessel. However, he felt that the ship had hit something. Luckily, the collision did not cause much damage, but water started leaking into the ship. Water started getting everywhere, and he needed to drink water, but he couldn't find any. He drank from the water that entered the bathroom, only to be surprised that it was fresh water and not salty. He was terrified and started talking to himself. "I know someone is here. I don't want fresh water. Just open the door and stop this silly game." But no one answered him. The water started leaking more, and he started hearing voices outside. He tried to open the door repeatedly, but to no avail. Night fell, and a strong storm began to shake the ship while he was trapped inside the bathroom. He ended up injured and trapped among the waves. In the morning, after losing all hope, he gathered his strength and tried again to open the door, only to discover that the lock had opened by itself. He pushed the door and finally got out. After catching his breath, he took the bathroom door and went up to the deck with it, where he tied buoys that looked like rafts to it. Then he went down into the water after tying it to the ship. He went back up to get food and water, then returned to the raft he had made himself. He thought the ship was going to sink at any moment, but after a short while he noticed that the ship was stable and hadn't sunk, so he decided to go back to it to drain the accumulated water. After that, he went back inside and tried to communicate via radio again, but there was no one to respond to him. Then he decided to start repairing the ship and the sail, but he suddenly heard a sound. He noticed a fishing boat near him. He quickly went down and decided to head towards this boat, but something strange and frightening happened at the same time. The ship he was on started moving quickly towards him while he was lying on the raft in the water. He was terrified. He jumped into the water without understanding what was happening and refused to go back to the ship again, preferring to stay in the water. After a short time, he felt large fish moving under his feet, so he thought his end was near and that he would be devoured by sharks. But the surprise was that those fish were not sharks, but dolphins, and they started playing with him. However, he was feeling very cold and couldn't stand the situation, so he had to go back to the ship again. He took a blanket and covered himself with it, then he dozed off. In the morning, he woke up to find the door locked on him and heard a sound inside the bathroom. When he closed the toilet lid, he noticed a small door and heard the sound of movement inside it. When he opened the door, he heard the sound of footsteps of someone running. He went up to the deck, but the door was still closed on him, so he had to enter through the small door. He found a lot of food cans, which made him realize that someone was hiding there, but he couldn't get out. After that, he noticed that the speed of the ship was gradually increasing. When he looked in front of him, he found that the ship was heading quickly towards a nearby island. He started screaming and hitting the ship, demanding that it be stopped immediately. He was crying and saying, "Shame on you, I can't take it anymore." He was in a very tight spot, but suddenly, the ship started spinning on its own, causing him to hit his head and lose consciousness. When he woke up, he found that the ship had stopped and that the door had opened automatically. He went out in a panic and discovered that the room door had also opened naturally. He quickly went up to the deck and found the ship standing right in front of the island. He immediately got off it and grabbed an iron bar in his hand. He started looking for the person who was playing with him, but the strange thing is that he did not find any trace of anyone. What surprised him more was that the ship started moving on its own towards the sea, while he was standing on the pier watching the ship move away until it disappeared from sight. He kept walking on the island until he found himself returning to the same place where he started the journey, and his boat was there as it was. He went crazy. He couldn't understand who was on that scary ship, nor how he got back here, and we, in turn, did not understand what was happening in the movie. The movie ends on this scene. Don't forget, dear, to click like and share your opinion with us about this strange movie, and we'll meet in the next movie.